Well, good evening. It's good to see everyone out this evening. I am excited and honored for the opportunity to bring a portion of God's Word to you. I had an old lesson that I wanted to preach tonight, and I looked at it. It was from 2018, give or take. I started reading through the lesson, and I thought, surely I didn't preach this. It was so bad. And so I deleted the entire thing and used the concept of the sermon and redid it. It's simplified. I hope it's simple, and I hope it's effective. And if it's not effective, it'll be short. So I got to get you happy somewhere. But no, seriously, I hope you find something from this that does touch you or help you in some way. I spoke with the teens before coming up here in the teen Devo class back there, and I asked them about wisdom. I said, how would you guys define wisdom? Without a book in front of you or a dictionary in front of you, and I would ask you the same. How would you define wisdom? And just kind of think about that in your head. If someone asked you, hey, what is wisdom to you? What would you say? If you do look it up, you're going to find something along the lines of this, which is wisdom is the ability to apply knowledge, experience, and good judgment to make sound decisions and understand life in a deeper, more meaningful way. I think that's a fair definition, and it encompasses wisdom very well. So wisdom is the proper application of what we have been taught or have learned through experience to make good choices and in order to achieve or receive a desired outcome. I once heard Michael Ray, I think, refer to this as being able to see the end from the beginning. So that touches, with that. And so we see the value of wisdom. But also in this learning and experience, we're exposed to the power and consequences of choice. The things we choose to do will have consequences. And those consequences, whether good or bad, great or small, contribute to life's lessons. If we learn from those choices and consequences how to do and be better, then we have gained wisdom for good. But if we continue to make choices without putting that wisdom to use, then we will likely fail and experience more pain. And there's a powerful example in the Bible of the wisest man who lived making some decisions that bore heavy consequences, and that is King Solomon. So tonight I'd like to consider 3 lessons from choices made by wise King Solomon. I appreciate Aiden reading 1 Kings 3, 5 through 9, and this is where our first lesson begins, which is humility. We cannot grow without God. Solomon was offered anything from God in this reading and chose to ask for an understanding mind that he may discern between good and evil. And what is God's response to that? If we keep reading in verses 10 through 14, it says, "It pleased the Lord that Solomon had asked this, and God said to him, because you have asked this, and have not asked for yourself long life or riches or the life of your enemies, but have asked for yourself understanding to discern what is right, behold, I now do according to your word. Behold, I give you a wise and discerning mind, so that none like you has been before you, and none like you shall arise after you. I give you also what you have not asked, both riches and honor, so that no other king shall compare with you all your days. And if you walk in my ways, keeping my statutes and my commandments, as your father David walked, then I will lengthen your days." It's estimated that Solomon was between his probably late teens to early 20s when he became king. It's kind of curious to think about this. How many of us can look back at our 20-year-old self and say, that's exactly what I would ask for? Probably not. I tried to trick the teens, and I was like, hey, you get one wish. What is it? Jackson Humble, more wishes. And I said, nope, can't wish for more wishes. He goes, fine. Every time I'm out of the third wish, it recycles to the first wish. And I was like, you're wishing for more wishes, dude. Doesn't work that way. He got me. But they quickly caught on. Someone actually said wisdom right off the bat. Someone said a perfect health, never to be sick again. And I enjoy that entertainment, to think about what would our wish be? What would it look like? And I think it would look different depending on situations. What are we facing? What are we dealing with? I imagine that wish might have looked very different for the Blevins a week ago. Maybe very different for the Bellwoods, years ago, dealing with this stuff. Wishes may look different depending on circumstances. For Solomon, he was facing a very heavy duty ahead of him. But I have to credit this young man that he asked for a wise thing. His father David in 1 Kings 2:9 actually refers to Solomon as a wise man, which I think is so cool, because here we have this wise man exercising some wisdom to ask for more wisdom. Help me guide this people. Help me to have an understanding heart. So he asked for a great thing, and then we see God answer this with not just what Solomon asked for, but much, much more. So we know by this example that we need to ask God for help in the right way and for the right things. God wants us to depend on Him, ask Him for help again, and so we must be connected to God throughout our journey. I want you to consider this illustration. And what I have up here is a cell phone that is fully charged. So maybe we get lost. You're hiking on a trail, you're in the middle of nowhere, you have no clue where to go. But you have the most powerful cell phone that is out. And I don't really know if this one's it or not, the first picture that came up. You have the most powerful cell phone, it's fully charged, so you reach for your cell phone and it says, no service. No network found. No connection. What good is the power that you hold in your hand if you need directions? No bueno. No good. It is of less value than a MapQuest printout at that point. I would much rather have the MapQuest printout if my phone's not going to have connection. So our connection to God must exist for us to succeed in our own journey, to get to where we need to go. As we consider some other passages, just in reference, John 15:5, apart from me, you can do nothing. And then Proverbs, I have a Proverbs reference in most, if not all, of these points because they were written by Solomon himself. Proverbs 3:5-6, trust in the Lord with all your heart. I wonder how he came to these conclusions. Maybe through some experience, through some learnings of his own. So we see that choices matter, alone from this first point. Solomon chose wisdom at first, great, but we also know that he later lost connection and he chose compromise. The prestige and successes and great things he was able to do, it appears that he convinced himself that maybe he knew best. After all, he was the wise one. He was the rich one, the knowledgeable one. But pride and compromise is a trap that we are all susceptible to. So we learn from wise Solomon, point number 2, that pride, to reject God, and He will reject us. If we reject God, He will reject us. So despite his warnings, if we look in 1 Kings chapter 11, we see some major compromise made by King Solomon. 1 Kings chapter 11, verses 1-6 initially here. Now King Solomon loved many foreign women, along with the daughter of Pharaoh, Moabite, Ammonite, Edomite, Sidonian, and Hittite women, from the nations concerning which the Lord had said to the people of Israel, you shall not enter into marriage with them, neither shall they with you, for surely they will turn away your heart after their gods. Solomon clung to these in love. He had 700 wives who were princesses, 300 concubines, and his wives turned away his heart. For when Solomon was old, his wives turned away his heart after other gods, and his heart was not wholly true to the Lord his God, as was the heart of David his father. For Solomon went after Ashtaroth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and after Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites. So Solomon did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and did not wholly follow the Lord, as David his father had done. Furthermore, we see that Solomon contributes some pretty gross things. In 7 and 8, Solomon built a high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, and for Molech, the abomination of the Ammonites on the mountain east of Jerusalem. And so he did for all his foreign wives who made offerings and sacrificed to their gods. I think there's a few things we consider, but definitely we can consider that Solomon was blinded, probably by pride, I would say, to God's command not to marry these foreign wives. Maybe he thought that by marrying all these women from different places that this would strengthen the kingdom's peace and power and prosperity. And this is, of course, how negotiations would take place. Kings would marry princesses from other places. But I can't help but wonder, with all this wisdom, with all his prestige, with all eyes that would have been on Solomon, what kind of example was that? What kind of influence was he having on the people that would follow him? This is terribly misleading. In Proverbs 16:18, he says himself, pride goes before destruction. He learned that. James 4:6, God opposes the proud but shows favor to the humble. Pride is a terrible, terrible and scary thing. Teenagers, what do y'all tell me what's on the board? Huh? Titanic. Okay, so we have a picture of the Titanic on the board. You know, the Titanic was called unsinkable. Unsinkable. Yet on its maiden voyage, that is, its first voyage, it took the lives of over 1,500 people. Do you think that there may have been some pride from the owners or builders of the Titanic? There was. This huge, expensive, elaborate, uncomparable boat. Nothing can stop it, and yet it sunk by an overgrown ice cube. Just like this, pride in what we do, what we think we're capable of. We make choices that matter. And it seems that Solomon chose to rely on his wisdom rather than obedience and connection to God. So pride begins when we choose our own way instead of God's way. The last lesson I want to consider tonight is one not from the story of Solomon in 1 Kings, but rather a consideration of his writings. Solomon wrote Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Solomon. Now, some scholars lean toward the timing of these to be that Song of Solomon was written in Solomon's younger years, Proverbs in his middle years, and then Ecclesiastes in his latter years. And the tone of Ecclesiastes does lean toward this being true, as it seems a reflection of what Solomon may have regretted, but definitely would have learned and experienced through exercising of his knowledge and all these things that he kept going through. So it's interesting that he closes the book of Ecclesiastes with this phrase of to fear God and keep his commandments. All the conclusion of everything he tried and exercised came to this: fear God and keep his commandments. Now, in Ecclesiastes 1 verse 2, we see that Solomon declares all these pursuits as vanity. This is the book of Ecclesiastes. All is vanity. He experienced any and everything we could experience today, and has left us with what is to gain from all of it if God is not the focus, and that is nothing. We will never be filled or satisfied with a worldly goal or focus. If God's not in the picture, we're missing it. I want to consider a couple readings out of Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes 1, 13 through 18 to begin with. He says, "And I applied my heart to seek and to search out by wisdom all that is done under heaven. It is an unhappy business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. I have seen everything that is done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and a striving after wind. What is crooked cannot be made straight, and what is lacking cannot be counted. I said in my heart, I have acquired great wisdom, surpassing all who were over Jerusalem before me, and my heart has had great experience of wisdom and knowledge. And I applied my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. I perceived that this is also striving after wind. For inasmuch wisdom is much vexation, and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow. Back to back with that, Ecclesiastes chapter 2. As we look at verses 4 and through 11, I won't read all of these verbatim, but in verse 4, I made great works. I built houses and planted vineyards. I made myself gardens and parks, with them all kinds of fruit trees. I made myself pools from which to water the forest of growing trees. I bought male and female servants. I did this. I did that. Keep going down. So I became great, verse 9, and surpassed all who were before me in Jerusalem. Also my wisdom remained with me, and whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I kept my heart from no pleasure, for my heart found pleasure in all my toil, and this was my reward for all my toil. Then I considered all that my hands had done, and the toil I had expended in doing it, and behold, all was vanity, and a striving after wind, and there was nothing to be gained under the sun. On the board, I have a picture of a bucket that has a bunch of holes in it. Trying to fulfill yourself with things of the world is like trying to fill this bucket with water. What's the problem with the bucket? It's just going to keep leaking the water out. No matter how much water you put in, it's going to keep pouring out. We cannot fill this bucket. So equally are the holes of human satisfaction when it comes to worldliness. We cannot fill our body with joy from things or money or pleasures because we will always want more. Or if we have acquired all there is to acquire, what good did it do? Especially if it costed our soul. 1 John 2:15, do not love the world. Matthew 16:26, what good will it be for someone to gain the whole world if you forfeit your soul? Proverbs 27:20, death and destruction are never satisfied, and neither are human eyes. Choices matter. Solomon chose to explore worldly pleasures over lasting purpose. So the true satisfaction comes only when we choose God over the world. Ecclesiastes 12 in verse 13 is probably, in my opinion, the greatest lesson left by Solomon. And it was a lesson, interestingly, taught to him by his father David. In 1 Kings chapter 2 and verses 1 through 3, and I'm going to compare these two for you. Ecclesiastes 12:13, the end of the matter, all has been heard. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. Who said it first? 1 Kings 2, 1 through 3, when David's time to die drew near, he commanded Solomon his son, saying, I am about to go the way of all the earth. Be strong and show yourself a man, and keep the charge of the Lord your God, walking in his ways and keeping his statutes, his commandments, his rules, and his testimonies, as it is written in the law of Moses, that you may prosper in all you do and wherever you turn. I always found that so interesting that the wisest thing Solomon was left with was the dying words his father left him. How cool is that? That the heart after God's own heart left this instruction to his son. Sad that his son couldn't carry that heart on throughout his own life. You know, I do appreciate that we're able to consider these lessons from wise Solomon, though, especially given that we are able to reference, his own writings, his own learnings, his own application of knowledge and experience to show us how we should and can use wisdom. I find it frustrating, though, that especially for me, and I'm sure others have experienced this, that we are so stubborn. That regardless of how many times we may be told something, warned of something, reminded of something, we still have to test the waters. How many of us now, I think, especially as we've matured or in mature ages, having experienced some of those things, we look back and we might say, I should have listened. I should have listened to what they had to say about this. Solomon went through these experiences, and we have these stories to learn from. We can gain wisdom from his experience, from his writings, from his story, and we can use that knowledge to make choices that bring a better outcome. So in conclusion, we must humbly rely on God, and if we lack something, we need to ask God for it. As it pertains to wisdom, we see in James 1:5, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach. We need to beware of pride and know that if we reject God, he will reject us. We need to fear God and keep his commandments. So, some challenging questions. Are we trying to grow without God? Do we see pride sneaking into our life? Are we chasing the world's empty promises at times? Are we making choices that lead us away from him? These things can happen, but that's why we are here to encourage and pray for one another. So if you have a need, let it be known as we stand and as we sing.